Remember 11 is an experience that, despite playing the game just a few months ago, I feel like I have a very sharp and yet smudgy and disjointed image or perception of, as well as complex feelings towards. And in this video, I'm going to try and explain these feelings as well as attempt a review or autopsy of the experience of the game as a whole. The problem with grading Remember 11 is that the entire primary experience of the game is metatextual, and you could say that means Remember 11 strives for something higher than a traditional visual novel, Aerodate, or dating sim experience, but I think that viewpoint is very... I don't want to call things Western disparagingly because it invokes a Japanophile weeaboo sort of vibe, but I also think it's equally problematic to view more metatextual works necessarily higher than things that are more straightforward. I don't feel like Doki Doki Literature Club is necessarily better than Tsukihime because in my view, Tsukihime invokes a very impassioned artistic experience, while Doki Doki is a very shallow deconstruction that's very 2D, very fake, and it's supposed to feel fake, but I just don't feel that something being a 2D image fake deconstruction, and that's the point of it, necessarily makes it better than something that does invoke a full aesthetic and narrative experience. If you parody the stylistic trappings of even an ultimately hollow experience like a Thomas Kinkade painting, does that necessarily make it better? I don't think it does. And I think the problem is that journalistically and sort of popular perception-wise, this is a sentiment that I saw echoed a lot regarding Doki Doki. I think that works that feature more metatextuality still have to be graded on what they accomplish on their own grounds, and how their metatextuality is an experience that is a tangible sensory and aesthetic experience, and it can be explained and felt more so than just thought about. In my memory of the game, all plot and character, musical, art, and atmospheric elements have become superseded, and this is a major spoiler, by the fact that the game as a narrative is a purposefully unsatisfying, empty, and unfinished narrative experience because the goal of the game is to trap the player in the experience of thinking that there's more to the game when there isn't. To introduce the game, Remember 11: The Age of Infinity is a visual novel in the Infinity series of games. Developed by Kid and written by Takumi Nakazawa and, apologies to Mr. Nakazawa, more importantly Kotaro Uchikoshi, it seems from what I've read about the development of the game that Uchikoshi and Nakazawa had a lot of disagreements about where the story would go, and that the final direction of the game, specifically the ending and other metatextual elements, were more so his idea. Uchikoshi is a really interesting and great and weird writer. He also went on to make the Zero Escape series, wrote and directed The Somnium Files, as well as writing its sequel, and is currently working on the awesome, insane, and weird thing that is 100-Line Last Defense Academy with Kazutaka Kodaka, you know, the Danganronpa guy. And it's one of the most insane projects that I've seen lately, and I want with all of my heart for it to succeed. My point with all of this is that Kotaro Uchikoshi is a very strange writer. I'm not as familiar with the other parts of the Infinity Saga, so despite playing a lot of Ever 17 when I was younger and really liking it, playing 999, and reading quite a lot about the first game, Never 7: The End of Infinity, I had a lot of reading up to do upon finishing Remember 11 to even start to begin to prepare to understand what was going on. Uchikoshi is a writer with very strong recurring plot and theme fascinations, and that seems to be something that's shared between people like Kodaka, Ryukishi 07, Kojima, and Gen Urobuchi, where a lot of their works will share very strong DNA of similar elements and themes, fascinations, and so on, in the same way as and often superseding the way more traditional fiction authors have done so. Gen Urobuchi is obsessed with space god endings and trying to remake Kamen Rider Ryuki. Ryukishi 07 is obsessed with narrative experiences that very often cycle between incredible contrasts of like absolute despair and the most beautiful hopes and feelings imaginable, and Kojima is Kojima. Uchikoshi's overarching obsessions seem to be writing around timelines and incredibly complex narratives, and strong and dissonant characterization that makes the player truly wonder the scope of what's going on. Ever 17 and 999 deal extensively with multiple timelines, with a lot of confusing and complicated moving parts. It feels like Remember 11 is the most extreme implementation of this methodology, which is interesting because it comes in the middle of his body of work, being bookended by the more popular and palatable Ever 17 and 999 on either side. With it established that Uchikoshi seems to, especially in the instance of this game, write scenarios and characters that are purposefully confusing to the player, I want to, from memory, try and explain the plot of Remember 11 a little bit. Remember 11 opens with a character called Fuyutawa Kokoro, who is a sociology major who is on a plane bound for Hokkaido. She's going to visit a patient at a psychiatric hospital called SPHIA, or SPHIA. The patient is a girl with multiple personality disorders who killed a lot of people at a hospital with like scissors or something. So you're on the plane and you're talking to this young boy called Kusuda Uni. And you are also, in switching perspectives, Yukito Satoru. And we're not entirely sure what's going on with him. He's on a clock tower, he gets pushed off by someone, and he doesn't know who, which is a very recurring, almost to the point of being incredibly grating and annoying thing that happens in the game. He wakes up in the SPHIA facility, and people are reacting to him very strangely, as if he's already been talking really weird stuff to them and saying loads of really weird stuff, and he's stuck there. And the plane that Fuyutawa Kokoro is on, I'm gonna sound like such an idiot because the plot gets so complicated. Fuyutawa Kokoro, her plane crashes. She wakes up in a log cabin with 3 other people. One of them is the boy, Uni. Uni is also in SPHIA with Yukito Satoru. However, he's very, very uncommunicative and standoffish with Satoru. The thing with Remember 11 is that both protagonists switch bodies at seemingly random intervals, with no perception of what their body was up to in the time when they were inhabiting another body. You also find out later that they're switching bodies not only across space but also across time as well, with the events in the SPHIA facility taking place a year after the events that are taking place in the log cabin, despite the fact that both are unfolding concurrently from the player's perspective. Because both characters' souls are switching back and forth between each other's bodies, there's a lot of gender confusion, as well as confusion in general as to whether or not you can trust what the other person is doing in your body. It's also confusing for us, the player, because we, the player, only see one person's perspective at a time, but the person you are will switch at random. You could follow Kokoro after the switch to Satoru's body, or you could not. And the game plays a lot with this concept of whether or not you can trust what the other person is doing at any given time in your body. Especially at the start when Kokoro and Satoru have not yet found a way to communicate with each other and have never physically met, meaning they can only make judgments based on what the other people in the location tell them about what their body was doing while they weren't there. Another problem is that the other girl in the log cabin timeline was previously dating Satoru, and she doesn't exactly deal well with a college-age girl telling her that she is in actuality her long-lost love, and this makes her hate Kokoro, as well as affecting her sanity and relationship with the other people in the cabin as the game goes on. We'll get back to her later. They figure out that they can communicate via notes to each other, and they're trying to figure out and limit test what's happening. In the log cabin timeline, they're awaiting rescue after the plane crash, and this is exasperated when they find a newspaper dated from the future that says they were found frozen to death in the area around the cabin several days later, and that they're gonna be left in the mountains to die and that there's no search party coming, etc. So they're pretty bummed out about that. And a lot of the choices in that timeline revolve around trying to stop everybody from losing their mind. In the SPHIA timeline, things seem to be less drastic, but Satoru's body is trying not to get murdered all the time by some unknown assailant. At this point, it's worth mentioning that there are certain characters that seem very different depending on whether you are Kokoro's perspective of Satoru's body or Satoru's perspective of Satoru's body. And people gradually begin treating you with a lot of distrust, despite the fact that the body in the timeline is seemingly remaining static. And the game sort of operates forth from that premise. There's a mystery to be solved, there's a room we don't know about, someone we don't know is coming to kill Yukito Satoru, and nature is coming for the survivors of the plane crash with Kokoro. Everyone's trying to figure out what's going on, see if they can trust each other and stay alive, and if that sounded complicated, it's because it's supposed to be. And that's the confusing thing with this game. It's supposed to be complicated. And that's just the premise. The premise isn't even that complicated in comparison to what comes later. It continually stacks things like that on top of each other until the largest reveal of the game eventually comes. A reveal that only makes sense if you finish the game quite a few times and then read like interviews with staff and fan sites and stuff like that. It's supposed to be complicated because the game is supposed to hurt you. It's supposed to make you strain your head. I'm gonna link and show the major fan website that goes through the stuff that I use, because credit where credit is due, the fan community that tries to figure out what the fuck is supposed to be going on in this is really cool, and they do really cool work. It's fun and interesting that the experience of this game is good luck. Good luck. We wrote a whole bunch of bullshit. Go nuts. We don't know. Maybe we do. It's what people think Kojima writes like. And so the game progresses forward like that. People start showing extreme distrust towards whoever is in Satoru's body, because apparently he's behaving really erratically and violently. He gets more paranoid in his writings that people are trying to kill him, even instructing Kokoro that she mustn't eat any food at all while in his body. And Kokoro and the log cabin team try to stay alive and not go completely insane. Kokoro's trust for Satoru is continually brought into question in both timelines. So now it's probably time that we address something. Kokoro is a more neutral protagonist, and Satoru is the more moving and impassioned protagonist, because every character in the game is written to evoke Jungian archetypes almost one-to-one, with Kokoro being the anima or feminine life force, Satoru being the animus or masculine, the Leoria looking dude being the wise old man, the house mother SPHIA lady being the great mother. You get where all this is going. It actually spells it out pretty plainly in the opening, but honestly by the time all the characters and the premise and everything that was going on was introduced, I had completely forgotten what the opening even looked like. Oh, and by the way, in between switching perspectives, we also sometimes look at this weird red room, or this cold dark place. I wonder what's going on with those. It's probably nothing. As you get to the end of the game and start getting the closest thing to an unlocking ending, you encounter something very confusing as Kokoro. You, around the time you're supposed to die, wander away from the cabin and you see that it's actually fine outside. We're actually completely okay. We're not even in the mountains, we're beside a beach. You didn't notice this whole time? You're an idiot, dude. You're stupid. And you're just cruising around on the beach as Kokoro and taking in the vibes, and all of a sudden you see Satoru running towards you at Mach 9. And he's like, dude, we have got to go. No time for your woke nonsense, Kokoro. There is an operation to be taking place here. And you're like, okay, damn. The game ends. Go get that perspective from Satoru. Okay, go back, do that. Another playthrough, whatever. So now we've done that. Now you've gotten to the ending. The ending. The real part. Kokoro and Satoru finally get to meet physically, and the game presents it as, oh, I wonder if there's a spark between them. It's so cool to see the unlikely cohabitants/partners finally united. I wonder if Satoru will end up with her. Or maybe he's gonna reconcile with the other girl. There's only a few more things to wrap up. Wow, that was a cool game. There was some confusing parts I didn't really get, like the red rooms and what was going on with Satoru wrecking the gaff, or why the weather is different depending on who's in whose body, but I'm sure it'll make sense. Oh no, the crazy DID girl has the baby, and she's saying some really cryptic stuff, like that one weird rhyme she's been repeating the whole game about someone being behind you. Okay, fuck, maybe this isn't the real good ending. Okay, now the girl that was dating Satoru before finally gets to talk to Satoru. It's supposed to be this beautiful, loving reunion, but uh-oh, what's this in WTFing news? It turns out she doesn't have a fucking clue who he is, despite the fact that he's been talking about their past together this whole time. And she's been echoing the memories too. Yeah, it turns out it's the wrong guy. Weird. And he's all like, damn, what the fuck? Oh snap. And then this message comes up on screen that says, the story is not finished yet. Truth is not revealed. And it circulates through an incident. It is an infinity loop. And you're like, damn, okay, so it wasn't the true ending. Okay, I get it. I need to do more. I need to do all the things and figure out this mystery for good. Damn, I really thought I was at the end. Still, this is hype and you're booted back to the main menu. And this is the moment where the game says, fuck you, bro. Fuck you. You are busted. You are ugly. Beyond belief. You can get this ending after playing through the game. I believe it took me 3 or 4 times. You might even be able to get it on your second playthrough. There are at least 32 other endings to get, and none of them will ever resolve this plot thread. Because this game is designed in this really insane way where the whole point of the game is trapping you in trying to figure out what is going on here. And if I've left out anything here off the top of my head that seems like a major plot detail, it's because they're presented as if they're important, but they're really not, because the whole game is trying to keep you in this mystery finding mode where you need to try and solve the mystery and find the answers, and there just isn't one. Because from what I can tell, there is a character who is called Yukito Satoru. but does not look like you because you, Yukito Satoru, are not Yukito Satoru, the guy the girl remembers. You're some other guy who's his friend who meets you in like a white room and kills you, and you're like, oh snap. And then you find out that the reason why everyone regards you with suspicion is because actually when you're transferring consciousnesses between Kokoro and Satoru, for the small period where one of you is inside the red room, you're actually in the womb of the one mother lady, either 6 months in the past or 6 months in the future, and she has 2 twins inside of her womb. Twin A and Twin B. So then while that's happening, there's 2 babies in your normal body, and they're big babies causing big problems and being violent and breaking things and drinking poison because they're babies. And they haven't been born yet, and they don't understand what the world is. And you're like, damn, okay, I can get down with this whole babies thing, but like, tell me that this is going somewhere. And then you find out that the actual Yukito Satoru is some guy whose sister died in like 1995. So like, long before the events of the game, and he blames you. Not you, Yukito Satoru, not you, Kokoro, you, the player, because he has realized that he lives in a video game universe, and he is deciding to take that out on you, the player, the person playing the game. And you're essentially the god of this universe, and this whole game is him setting up a very complex, purposefully obscure and unsatisfying series of events to trap God, that's you, for the fact that his sister died off screen like 16 years ago. And the intro cutscene of the game, or whatever, is you assuming that she's the killer or something, and then because of that, she isn't remembered properly, and that's your fault. You play through the game over and over and over again, and this is a realization that comes from connecting things and reading fan sites, and then you get as far as you can go, and you realize that you're dealing with an empty, torturous experience that is completely metatextual and very effective, but what is it? Is it anything? Is it hollow? I don't know. If it's felt like me explaining everything here invalidates the experience of playing the game, then I sort of wonder if an experience that can be invalidated by someone explaining what happens is even one worth having to begin with. I'm in entirely 2 minds as to whether or not this experience was worthwhile. If there's a twist movie, like say Saw, I mean, not to spoil shit, but dude, that dead body on the floor of the bathroom is actually Jigsaw the whole time. And at the end, he stands up and zaps at him, and Boss walks out of the room, and then he's like, game over, and he leaves. And I still think Saw is a cool movie if you go into it already knowing that. The twist ending doesn't invalidate the experience. Is a metatextual twist that does entirely invalidate the experience equally as valid? Is it good? So, the point of this video is that I was sitting outside, I had just woken up, and I realized that I played this game in August or July. It's now December, and I still don't know how I feel about it. Does that mean it's good because it left a lasting impression? Does that mean it's bad because I still feel fundamentally unsatisfied? I feel like I'm asking very basic artistic questions here. But the problem is that within the medium of visual novels, I don't know how to rate or grade an ultimately purposefully hollow metatextual experience that's meant to punish you in a way that only a visual novel and only a computer program can. Like, is this high art? Is this stupid? Is it good? I don't know. So I guess this video is a question, and I don't really have anything more final than that. Kinda like Remember 11. Is something you experience that just troubles you and weighs on your mind, and sometimes you think it's good, and sometimes you think it was a complete waste of time, is that better than being something that's just good? It's a very postmodern, metamodern kind of question, but the problem is that books, because of the fact that they are inherently a complete thing, like, if a book ends on a question, it ends on a question. But if a visual novel that's a computer program ends as being a purposefully unsatisfying, hollow, infinite loop, is that the same kind of finality that you can have with the ending of a novel? In my opinion, it isn't, because it's inherently more open. And especially when Uchikoshi and the people at Kid have said that the game wasn't originally supposed to end like that, and that there was loads of internal conflict. No one was entirely happy with how it turned out, and Uchikoshi has expressed interest in remaking it. Does that weigh on this at all? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I don't know how I feel about Remember 11. The game is amazing in a lot of ways. It's really engrossing, the art is great, I was really interested in where things were going. I love the music, I like the characters, there's so much here, and at the same time there's nothing. At the same time, it's just constructed to bother you. And it's good at that, it's good at both, but the whole experience feels hollow. But the hollowness is the point. So at the end of the day, I just don't know how I feel about Remember 11. I don't. And that's pretty much a wrap. I've never made a video like this before, and I made this whole thing over one day. I'd like to thank my friend Tara for making the thumbnail and providing the lovely background footage that you've been looking at this whole time. I'd like to thank my boyfriend Tassu for helping me not go completely insane when the power went while I was writing the script for this. I guess like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you liked me, and have a great rest of your day. Peace.